Hey everyone, this is Christopher Brower here with Daily Motor, and today we're driving a car that as of 3 days ago, I had no idea even existed. This is a 2022 Infiniti QX55, and it's a little bit hard to explain, but bear with me for a second as I'm going to talk about BMWs. So as you know, we have the BMW X3, which is sort of just BMW's midsize / compact SUV with a normal hatchback-like rear roofline. And then BMW also makes the X4, which is the same thing as the X3, except it has more of like a swooping rear coupe-like roofline. And that's how I've made this car make sense, because of course Infiniti makes the QX50, which is a normal hatchback-style roofline car. And now they also make this, the QX55, which is essentially just a QX50 with a sloping roofline, which essentially just means you have less rear headroom and less cargo space. But it looks a little bit different. I suppose they want you to think that it's a completely different car. But here it is, the QX55. It's finished in a very nice dark blue color on the exterior. Inside, they've been really creative with what they've named this color, Stone. That's it, it's just called Stone. It's kind of like a light tan / white, but we've got black on the sides of the seats there. Pretty nice, pretty standard Infiniti looking like interior. I mean, honestly though, if you would have showed me a picture of this like last week and said, what kind of car is that? I literally would not have been able to tell you, because I've never seen one of these and I had no idea that they were making this car. Oh, yep. As you see, getting into the back of this, my head does touch the ceiling. Being a 5'11" individual, this is not always ideal for something that's marketed as an SUV. My head is literally pressed against the ceiling. So, you see the roofline, it should go like this, but instead it goes like that. So unfortunately, that is the price that you have to pay for wanting to have the swooping rear roofline. This particular QX55 is the Essential trim, which is the mid-grade trim, which doesn't really make any sense because the base trim is called the Luxe, like luxury, and then if you spec it higher, it's called the Essential. But anyways, here it is. It's about 53 grand. Oh man, I think the only way to find out if this car is any good is to take it out on a proper drive around the Daily Motor test loop and see how it performs. Once in the driver's seat of the QX55, you're met with very standard, weird Infiniti interior details, and the strangest thing being, but typical for Infiniti, is this dual screen setup. But something I was pleasantly surprised with is that we do have wireless Apple CarPlay in the sort of matte finish screen on top, and then in the glossy finish screen down here, it's just your normal Infiniti infotainment with their in-house navigation and other sort of settings, sound adjustments, everything like that. You've got your climate and seat controls as far as heating and cooling goes. You can't heat and cool at the same time, so that's a fail in my book. Just kidding. Well, kind of a little bit. We have a CD player here as well. And don't be fooled, this is not piano black. It's actually like a pretty cool sparkly metallic black material that they have surrounding here. There's a lot of soft touch points in here. Armrest here, armrest here. This is very soft. That would be nice for a long trip on the highway. Of course, have a leather steering wheel, leather on the top of the dash here. In fact, the whole dash pretty much, except for right here and here, is covered in leather, so that's nice to see. Got another interesting sort of flat black plastic material down here. We've got this trap door here. Drive modes are all handled here, parking brake. The shifter is a little bit odd and feels a little flimsy. You can see that it kind of moves around a little bit. Not something that's too big of a deal, but you know, something to keep in mind when you're spending 53 grand on a car like this. So let's go ahead and take this thing out on the road and see what it's like to drive. Push down once, put you all the way into drive, and we are off. So this QX55 is powered by a turbocharged 2-liter inline-4 that makes 268 horsepower, and I'm really sorry to say that that is backed by a CVT, but this CVT doesn't drive like many other CVTs. Infiniti have tuned it in such a way that it acts like a normal automatic transmission, but not in the way that you'd think, sort of, if that makes sense. I'll demonstrate once we get out onto the road. They've sort of tuned it in a way to trick you into thinking that it's a normal automatic, but sometimes it shifts like somebody that has never driven a manual transmission before, and there's sort of weird simulated shifts in here that just don't make any sense, and I kind of wish they would have just made it shift like a normal CVT does, or, you know, not shift, but drive like a normal CVT.
Traffic alert. US 12 road construction.
Yes.
Road closed ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, and then there's that woman who I don't really know how to turn her off. She pops up every now and then. If there's construction, she'll interrupt literally everything you're doing, take over and tell you there's construction. But also, she'll interrupt when she senses that there's an unpaved road nearby. Even if you're not going towards it, you know, if it's a couple streets over, she'll be like, just so you know, there's an unpaved road nearby here. It's something that you should watch out for. Oh, yes. 268 horsepower of fury there. You see that? Lots of simulated shifts there to make it seem like it's an actual automatic transmission. It also makes quite an interesting noise. It's very loud, but I don't know if it's pleasant or not. Let's put it in sport, because that makes it even louder. Put it in sport mode here. Oh yes, coming up on I think is the same Supra that went flying by me when I reviewed the Kia Carnival. That would be hilarious if it was the same guy. Anyways, though, they've definitely pumped through a lot of the engine noise through our Bose speakers here. I hate when companies do that. I don't really understand what the purpose of it is, because this one in particular doesn't sound that great, but, you know, it could be worse, I suppose. Coming in here to the first corner, see how this thing handles. I haven't really heard the tires squeal yet, so maybe we can make that happen now. Oh, yes. One thing I will say, I'll give this car a compliment. The steering is very direct and smooth and sharp. The car goes exactly where you point the steering wheel. There's no delay or anything. It has a nice feel to it. It's not too light. It's not too heavy. It's right in that sweet spot, right where you'd want an SUV to be. You do get a little bit of turbo blow-off noise as well, if you're really listening, if you're not listening to music. The ride quality is okay. It isn't the best, but I would assume that with the sloping rear roof line, they've maybe tuned it more for like a sporty feel, which I like as far as the steering goes. Turning now onto loose gravel. Oh yes. It's flat out. There's 60 miles an hour. Infiniti claims it'll do 0 to 60 in just under 7 seconds, which feels about right. You do have quite a bit of passing power. The torque comes on a little bit further on. I mean, it's not super fast off the line, being that it has a CVT. That is to be expected. You get more of your power when you're already going about 20 miles an hour, and then you floor it. That's when you really feel the power. We also have steering wheel mounted paddle shifters that actually do a pretty good job. As you can see, it's nicely simulating downshifts. There's second gear, turning into understeer. Go for an upshift. So that's where this CVT actually does a very good job. I've never driven a CVT where the paddle shifters are simulated quite as good as this one. With this QX55, we do also have some driver assists, but nothing that you'd find on, say, a Hyundai or a Kia. It's just sort of normal radar-guided cruise control, and that's the extent of it. We also have blind spot monitoring with this little light right here that lights up when there is a vehicle in your blind spot. So, pretty neat. Kind of more driving assist than I was expecting, so that's always a nice, pleasant surprise. Very sorry to say that we do not have an open entrance ramp today. have to merge going 25 because the general population usually doesn't really know how to go around a corner much faster than that. But as you've seen on Daily Motor, literally any car can go around that entrance ramp at speeds of 50 to 55 miles an hour with no problem at all. Maybe not light blue GMC Terrains, but I haven't driven one of those yet. Up to highway speeds, the QX55 is comfortable, it's quiet. If you hear the road noise, it's because the road surfaces in Michigan are dreadful. If you live here, you know that. It is just a very easy car to drive. You know, I got in this car knowing nothing about it. In fact, I picked it up in the dark, and while I was driving it home, I was like, I'm driving a car, I have no idea what the outside even looks like, but it's just a very easy car to drive. You get into it, everything's pretty user-friendly, it's easy to figure out. My phone connected immediately to the wireless Apple CarPlay, no headache there. All of the buttons on the steering wheel are easy to operate, it makes sense. So I suppose it's sort of best case scenario if you're like me and you've never heard of one and you go to drive one, you won't have any problems adapting to it. Should try and do a launch here. Obviously not an actual launch because it doesn't have launch control, but we'll go ahead and stick it into sport mode here. We'll select first gear there on the shifter. See if it'll let me brake boost it. Oh yeah, here we go. Second gear, 50. Oh, it's shifting 60. There it is. Yeah, that felt like about 7 seconds. Oh man. I think that this engine transmission combo is, being polite, really just not my favorite. I obviously never prefer cars that have CVTs, but it just doesn't work for me, especially in this sort of setup where you've got such a nice interior here. This car has a lot of potential, but unfortunately the parent company to Infiniti is Nissan, and they're obsessed with CVTs. So this car was destined from the beginning to have one, and that's very unfortunate because I feel like they could have put a nice V6 in this car, a nice 8-speed automatic, and it would have just made it so much better to drive. It would have made it better sounding. There's a police officer here. I'm going to go the speed limit. I mean, I have been going the speed limit the whole time, but anyways. 20 miles an hour around this curve. Yes, that is what we shall do. And back into standard mode. So for that, I would say that I probably wouldn't spend the 53 grand on this car. In fact, I'd probably rather just have a Hyundai Santa Fe, because the Santa Fe Limited Hybrid, with all the options and the self-driving and everything, is still like $5,000 cheaper than this car. And it's bigger, and it looks better, and it drives better. So that's just my 2 cents, coming from somebody who has not driven many Infinitis, but giving you my honest and...
Traffic alert.
Yes.
US 12 road construction. Road closed ahead.
Yeah, you see, you don't get her with a Hyundai, so if you like her, you have to have the Infiniti. She will be there for you. You can give her a fun name, like Sarah, or Helga, maybe, if you're feeling something like that. Maybe I'd call her Susan. Regardless, I think that this car is a bit of a fun gimmick, but I think as far as its competitors go, it's just really not all the way there.
Caution, road with restricted access.
Where? Alright everyone, that is going to conclude my drive of the 2022 Infiniti QX55. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I didn't upset any Infiniti/Nissan fanboys, because of course that was not my intent. I've given my honest opinion on the QX55. Push button for park. There it is. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching. Do one more little walk around to the car here so you can see it out in the daylight. It certainly isn't an ugly car. I wouldn't call it that, but yes, here it is. Alright everyone, well thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. This has been Christopher Brower with Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.